Hey everyone, thank you for joining the Ready to Fight podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Kimbrell, and along with me today is Justin Goeden. Justin, it is great to see you, my friend.
Yes, sir. Been a little bit.
Yes, sir, it has. Justin Goeden, let's introduce you to everybody. Justin is 38 years old. He was born in Fairbanks, Alaska, raised in Syracuse, Nebraska. He's happily married to the woman of his dreams. You have 2 daughters that are your world. You served in the United States Marine Corps for 6 years. You have 2 combat deployments to Iraq, serving in Fallujah and Ramadi. 1 combat deployment to Afghanistan and Helmand Province. You were awarded 2 Purple Hearts. After leaving the Marine Corps, you joined Blackwater for the next 2 years, doing more deployments as a contractor. Justin, it is great to see you, man, and it is definitely good to connect again on this basis. So I'm glad you're on this podcast with me today.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure. I appreciate you having me here.
We're going to jump into this just a little bit. I want to talk to you a little bit about what was it like in the Goeden home growing up, being raised in Nebraska. How many siblings did you have? Kind of give me a little bit of background.
Man, I guess as far back as I can remember, Nebraska's always home, right? So I'm the biggest Cornhusker fan you'll ever meet. There's no other college football team that's ever going to be better than Nebraska. My wife's a Clemson fan. I'll never jump on board. As she tries to buy sweatshirts, I won't wear them. Maybe in the dark where nobody can see. But as you can see, Nebraska it is. So being born and raised in Nebraska, it's a different ballgame. It's different than anywhere I've ever lived. I'd love to say I know what Alaska's like. I was like 9 months old when my parents moved to Nebraska. My dad's from Nebraska. My mom's from Oregon. So all I really know is Nebraska. From as far back as I can remember, I grew up in a small town, farm town. In Nebraska, there are probably 1,000 people in the town. We had 3 different towns that went to the same school. Graduating class was like 40 kids. So everybody knew everybody. Really small. Whole life, everybody was really close-knit, man. I grew up about 5 miles outside of town. All the gravel roads. It was just cornfields, bean fields everywhere. That's just the way of life. Hunting, fishing, it was just outdoors, everything. Life was just a little bit different. I mean, we didn't really I didn't have like a horrible childhood. I didn't have my childhood, I guess I could say, was compared to what like childhood now is, like mine might have been a little like less. I mean, I thought it was a great childhood, but like maybe that was just what normal was to me back then, but maybe it's not now. I guess, I don't know. My normal back in my childhood was you go to school, I didn't see kids getting in trouble, everybody, we had 2 bars in town, right? Like everybody in town had the old farmhouse or farm town. You get off work, you go downtown and everybody links up and everybody has a beer after work, and we loved it because as kids, you get to go with your parents and you get to play with all your friends after school. And when you live 5 miles out of town, like you're secluded after school. You get off the bus and it's just your siblings on the farm. Which was great as a child because you get to go climb trees, you get to go play in the cornfields, you get to build forts, you get to play in the barn like with your siblings. I had an older brother, I had a younger sister, 3 years apart both ways. So, the difference really wasn't that bad, I was kind of closer to my older brother than I was my little sister, but don't get me wrong, we fought probably more than me and my little sister did, but I don't really feel like playing house all the time with my little sister growing up. So me and my brother were making arrowheads and bow and arrows out of sticks and catching crawdads and fishing at the creek and doing all that stuff when we were growing up, but we fought like you wouldn't believe. And that was fun. That was my childhood. But, growing up in a small town like that, and everybody goes to bars and stuff like that. You have your household drama that you don't talk about when your kid's outside of the house. That was just the rule in the house. What happens in the house stays in the house. And that was what you grew up with, And so I can remember, sitting at the top of the stairs with mom and dad arguing, me, my brother and sister just listening to it, And back then, I didn't think, that was a problem, that was just what I thought everybody did in my school, but you just didn't talk about it at school because everybody had that rule, right? We didn't talk about it at school, and I'm not going to tell my friend about it. He's not going to tell me because that's the rule at his house, and that's the rule at my house. So that's just normal, right? Like mom and dad argue, and that's okay. Looking back at it now, it's 110%, not because they didn't like each other. It was probably alcohol infused, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was rough. Don't get me wrong. It was rough. And there were some battles. There was some rough stuff that, probably shouldn't have been going on and stuff like that. But it was a good childhood, I thought. You know what I mean? You could probably ask my sister and she'll probably say the same thing. My brother, maybe he'd say the same thing. I don't know. My dad is not my older brother's real dad. He's a Goeden. My older brother's a Goeden. My dad adopted him when he was 2. I didn't know that my brother was my half brother until I was probably 12 maybe, I think. So that was kind of a different thing to learn that when I was kind of growing up. I think my older brother, he learned that a little bit earlier than I did, but he ended up going and meeting his dad a little bit later in life. But I think that was only once. But he's always known that my dad wasn't his real dad, but he has the same last name as me. But I don't think him and my dad had a great relationship growing up. My dad kind of maybe looked at him maybe a little different. I can see that now as an adult, but I didn't see it as a child maybe. But
Yeah.
I didn't really know that we were any different. I thought we were all the same family. So it was a little different. But I can see now that maybe my brother had a little more of a difficult time than I did. I was my dad's firstborn, so maybe I was looked at a little different, but it wasn't a bad childhood, I don't think. I was the middle child for my mom. I was the first for my dad, but I was probably the trouble of the family, or as the rambunctious one, I would say. So I was good in school, I guess, but I was the smallest one in school. So growing up in a small town, like you don't have any little thing you do, right? Like everybody knows about. So like any little thing, any small thing inside that happens. So you have to be on your P's and Q's in a small town because everybody talks. Growing up with a religion, everybody goes to the same town. Everybody was Catholic. That was my whole life. It's like we all went to the same CCD every Wednesday, every Sunday. We were at the same church. It was a big thing. There was a lot of talk about the Catholic religion and donating. And it was just, I was too young to really know what was going on with it. I just did what my parents told me to do, and that's how I was raised. So that's kind of how that went on. There was a situation that my parents ended up getting divorced right when I was there in 7th grade. And so they kind of separated. So like my last year growing up there in Nebraska was a little difficult because, and I didn't help the situation, me of all people, go figure. They were going through divorce or separated. So we moved into town. My dad stayed out on the farm, and we ended up going with my mom, and my dad was out there by himself. And I did remember feeling kind of bad about that because I was really attached to my dad, even though I knew in my mind there was a lot of wrong things my dad was doing and my mom wasn't. But we had to go with my mom, and we were in town, and I did like that because I was close to my friends that were with school. But I did feel bad about not being able to see my dad and stuff. But that I didn't help the situation because that during the divorce and stuff, and I put a lot of pressure on my family and stuff because my brother was in high school and my sister was younger. It was, I'm not, I mean, I don't think I've shared this story with a whole lot of people, but everybody out in Nebraska knows it. You better believe it. It was probably 2 weeks after Columbine happened. I bought a lot of candy and I had it in my backpack, and I talked to a buddy of mine at school, and I took a CO2 cartridge and I wrapped a whole bunch of firecrackers around it with string. And I was going to go down to the local creek. We're going to blow up frogs, and we're going to do it after school. And, I had it in my backpack, and, I told him, I had candy too, and he wanted some candy. I wouldn't give it to him. So he told the principal I had a bomb in my back. Well, 7th grade. And so, and this is a small town, keep in mind, real small town. And so I got pulled in the principal's office, and you better believe the sheriff's department and everybody showed up. And oh man, a small town like that, the principal will leave the room and let your daddy have at you in that office. And he sure did. And, I was up against that wall real quick, and yeah, it was bad. And they had a guy in a big old suit come in there, big face shield, and put that little CO2 cartridge in a big old box. They walked in out of there like I was some criminal, and they had to come search my mom's house. It was bad. It was 2 weeks after Columbine, so you can only imagine how crazy that was. Yeah. They pulled my brother out of school in high school, and it was nuts. And so I put a lot of pressure on the family for that. And then they expelled me in my 7th grade year. There was 2 days left of the school year, and they expelled me. And they almost didn't want to let me come back for my 8th grade year. And they did. They ended up letting me come back for my 8th grade year. I ended up doing most of my 8th grade year back in Syracuse. And my mom, who was a postmaster with the post office, she did a convention, and she met somebody, and he was another postmaster and from New York, and they dated for a while. And they were going to get married. And so he was from New York. And so we ended up moving to New York when we got married. And so I finished my 8th grade year out in New York, like the last quarter, maybe the last 3 months, which was a huge culture shock for me, but it was great for me. My graduating class went from 42 kids between 3 towns to 250 kids in the same town. So I felt like I met somebody new every day. It was pretty cool in high school, but it was also culture shock in school too, because in Nebraska, you didn't backtalk the teacher because the teacher drank beer with your father after school at the bar, and he'd tell you what you did in school. My first day of school in New York, I saw a kid throw a book at a teacher, and he just told him to walk out of the class. So it was different. I didn't know what was going on. But it was cool. So I ended up finishing high school out there, and that was pretty much my childhood up until that point. New York kind of formed me a little bit and turned me kind of a little different, I guess. I met a lot of different people that influenced my life. A lot of great friends, Billy, Doug, like a lot of those guys followed me into the Marine Corps too. A lot of those guys are really still close with me throughout my childhood, I guess, in my high school years. But a lot of the kids in Nebraska, I guess I'm still friends with a couple of them, but those are the ones that I really, really grew up with before we even started school, preschool, kindergarten. Those are the ones I'm still connected with. But other than that, Nebraska's still got a place in my heart. You know what I mean? And it always will. And my daddy's still out there, and I think he's still out there because it's always got a place in his heart too. That's where he was born and raised. And my grandma just passed away last year, and she was, I guess, the final piece for Nebraska for me out there. But my cousins and my aunt and uncles are out there. It's a big family. I got a lot of uncles, and I got an aunt that's still out there. And between South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa, we're spread out right there, and that's just, it'll always be home. I'll have a deep connection to that place, but. Will I ever move back out there? I'd love to if the scenario was right, but I don't know. It'll always have a heart. But my childhood out there, I would love to raise my children out there for sure. I think the values, I think the environment, I think the getting away from the computers and the technology and living away from the town and having to literally go outside, and we weren't allowed to come inside. You know what I mean? Like your parents made you stay outside, and they didn't want you inside. They were cleaning the house. They didn't want you inside. You had to stay outside all weekend, So just the imagination and the coming up with how do you make a door out of sticks and twine, like that I think taught me a lot, as a kid, and just being able to do stuff like that. So I miss it, man. I really do. And I bought a piece of property out here in South Carolina that just has a little bit of space and stuff that I can try to implement that with my daughter too. So I miss it. Don't get me wrong. I miss it, but I had a great childhood growing up like that. Don't get me wrong that there were struggles, but I think everybody has that in any demographic and wherever they live. But
yeah,
it was a great childhood. I think there's good and bads no matter what childhood you have, no matter what demographic you live in. But I love Nebraska. I always will love Nebraska. I think it was a great place.
So you're in New York now and you're graduating high school. What drove you to choosing the Marine Corps over any of the other branches out there?
This is going to be a good one, especially for you, Bruce. So I was in 10th grade of high school, right? I was actually in English class when 9/11 happened, and I was in New York, right? So being from Nebraska, I didn't know what the trade centers were, right? I seen the trade centers maybe my freshman year when my stepdad took me to Shea Stadium for my first Mets game, and I could see them from the parking lot. That's the first time I ever saw them in real life. I didn't really know what they were. My English teacher, I remember her name was Miss Tichillo. Her husband was the history teacher. And they rolled the TV in when the first plane hit. And we sat there and we watched the second one hit. And I remember everybody's just devastated. And I remember just looking around. And all these people are like, they're born and bred New Yorkers, and like they're just really getting emotional. And I'm looking around and like, I don't understand it. Like, I don't understand what the deep connection is like to the state and like what it means. And like, and they're really getting like they have family members that are in the city. And that's what I was missing at that point. Like they have family members that are in the city that work there. And so like the whole school kind of shut down. They kind of sent everybody home. And that's really when I thought about it. And cause like, I really never, my freshman year, my sophomore year, I really never thought about what I wanted to do, in life. And so I kind of really went to bed that night. And I really thought about like, what are you going to do? Like, where are you going to go to college? What's your career path going to be? Cause that really kind of put it in perspective, right? So like the trade center, I know America was really on edge and America was really like hype. And that's really when the war broke out, right? So I didn't know what I was going to do. Like this was kind of like the turning point in my life. I was what? 15 years old, 16 years old at the time. Like, this is the turning point. Like, where are you going to go? Here's your crossroads. This is my first real crossroads in my life. You're going to go left, you're going to go right. So like, I knew like my family, the Goeden family, like I'm a real proud person. Like I'm proud of my last name. And like, so I had an uncle, my uncle Wayne was in the Army, right? He was military police my Uncle Rod was military police, I believe, in Vietnam. And my Uncle Rod, he was Army Reserve. And I had a cousin Tanya who's in the Army, and that's all I thought. That's all I knew that was in the military. And so Army was very present in the Goeden family. But I've always been a little different. I've always wanted to go on my own path. But I never even thought about the military. College was kind of in my ballpark. I wasn't like a great student, don't get me wrong, but I was never a bad student. I never really did homework. I never really studied, but I always, like, for some reason in school, I paid attention in class, but like I could just remember and retain stuff. I'm a great trivia player. If you need somebody on your team, I'm really good at trivia. I love trivia. For some reason, I just retained some stuff. But like, and I always did good. I was mid 80s, low 90s, and I just passed my classes. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I looked at my mom, and I really didn't want her to pay for my college, you know? And I just didn't want to put that burden on her. And so I knew the military was going to pay for college eventually if I wanted to go for it. But I knew our country was at war. And so, I thought about it for a long time, and I said, I think the proudest thing I could ever do is serve a purpose greater than myself, right? And so when everybody else was sitting down saying, I don't want to go, I wanted to be the person that said, I'll do it. I'll stand up. You guys stay here. Like, I'll be the one that goes. And I knew what the sacrifice could be, and I knew what the cost could be. And I was young, bro. Like, I was 16, and I was a little guy. Like, I was tiny. I think at 16, I was wrestling 103 pounds. My sophomore year, when I told my mom I wanted to join the military, you could only imagine the shock when a 103-pound kid said, I want to join the military. And I won't lie, like I told my mom I was going to join the Air Force, and I wanted to be a PJ. Yeah, that's what it was going to be. I was going to join the PJs. I did take the ASVEP with the Army because they were the most pushy, and they took me up the Red Way. And they're going to get me on a Green Bay contract, right? So I took the ASVAP. I didn't do too bad. And so with my scores, I talked to the Air Force recruiter, and they're like, yeah, we can get you on a PJ contract. Let's go. And so I remember, I think I went up to MEPS, and I was supposed to swear something about the job closed out or something like that. And so I was supposed to, I don't know what happened. It was a big blur. And so the job closed out, and they told me like I could be a hotel manager for like a couple months until it reopened or something. And I didn't trust it. And I said, I just want to fight. And they're like, well, you can walk into that office right there. And I'd already been talking to the Marine Corps recruiter as my next choice. And so I ended up walking over there. I talked to him, and I said, dude, I want to swear in right now. And we did probably 6 hours of paperwork or whatever. It ended up happening, and I ended up swearing in that same day. And I remember calling my mom. She said, do I have a son in the Air Force? I said, you've got a son in the Marine Corps. She was not happy. It was pretty bad. I remember that night, she called my dad, and I remember my dad on speakerphone, like, your son, this blood's going to be on your hands. Like, your son's going to come back in a body bag. It's going to be on you. It was bad. And I remember going to bed that night, like, 60, I was scared. I was like, man, maybe he's right. Like, maybe I am coming back. Like, maybe I made the wrong choice. And, but I was still proud of it. Like, and so my junior year, my senior year, I knew where I was going. I knew what I was doing. I think out of 250 kids in my graduating class, I think 4 of us joined the military. So during graduation, they asked us all to stand up, and that was a proud moment for me. So that's kind of like the turning point on where I really wanted to go. And that's, don't get me wrong, I graduated boot camp, or I graduated high school on Saturday, and I left for boot camp on Sunday. So the very next day, I was gone. I was ready to go.
Wow. So walk us through now. You leave New York. You just graduated high school. Now you're standing on those yellow footprints in the Marine Corps. What kind of culture shock was that for you?
I was culture shock before I even stood on the footprints. So I'm flying down there, and we landed in the airport. So like I didn't know what to, nobody really. I mean, you go to the recruiter's office, my dad's crying, everybody's crying to give you hugs. Crap, I'm crying. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I don't know what to expect. It's the first time I'm leaving home. I know I'm gone for 3 months. You know what I mean? Keep in mind, Bruce, it's a little longer than any other branch. So it's a long time. And I've never been away for this long. I went to wrestling camps and stuff like that, but it was never this long. And this ain't, mommy and daddy ain't saving you on this one. You either graduate or you don't. And I knew it was going to be tough. So I get off the plane, and you can tell all the other kids that are getting off the plane in South Carolina for boot camp. Yeah. And we're kind of walking through the airport as a group, and we know we belong to the same group, but we don't know where we're going. And you got some kids that have already like seen on YouTube or something, like what drill instructors sound like. So they're kind of imitating that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be that guy that's, you can go ahead and do that if you want to. And then all of a sudden we kind of come into a crossroad where you can see down a hallway. And I look down the hallway and I see these guys marching. And I'm like, man, I think maybe we should go that way. And I see a drill instructor, and he like stops and just turns. And he looks at, and that voice and that knife hand, yeah, we were right on line. And I'm not lying. It was like a dungeon underneath the airport is where they took us. And it was like, you were up against the wall. And it was like, you see the videos of the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, where they greet you. And they don't greet you like that in the Marine Corps. You don't get a nice phone call. Like, they screaming in your face while you're on phone with mama. Like, you can get to read something real quick. Like, and it's a 2-second phone call, like, and you hang up, like, there ain't no goodbyes. They check your feet for whether you're flat or there's an arch, and you just go. For the first 72 hours, I think, or something, I don't know, you don't sleep. And you just nut to butt with somebody, and you praying you don't go to sleep because you don't want to be the one. And that's nuts. And then you get on the bus, and you're just trying to sleep as best you can, and then somebody gets on the bus, and you find out it's his bus because he says, "Get off my bus." On footprints, you know what I mean? And that's the last time you'll step on yellow footprints. And then you're standing in front of these big metal silver doors that look beautiful with the huge Marine Corps symbols. They give you this big speech that says this is the first and the last time you'll enter through these doors, and once you leave this island, you'll become a Marine if you should make it. And that was a powerful speech, man. And then you sit at desks, and next thing after that, your hair's gone, and you're in receiving, and it's real life after that.
So tell us from your experience now, going through the training, looking back on it, right? When you're there, it's kind of hard to focus on everything that's going on, but looking back now, you can go, man, wasn't that hard? Or, man, it was difficult. What was it like? What was the hardest thing for you through that training phase?
And Marine Corps training, like boot camp?
Yeah.
Mental, 90%. 80% mental. Like it's probably 20% physical. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's rigorous, man. Like you're up every morning. Like they drag you through the dirt in the morning time. Don't get me wrong. Like it's physical too. If you're not used to like a sleep schedule, like if you're not used to like a waking up at a certain time, if you're not used to eating at a certain time, if you're not used to working out at a certain time, if you're not used to drilling at a certain time, it's rudimental. Like they literally. Their whole sole purpose, and not everybody in the military probably knows it. It doesn't matter what branch. They all have the same structure to breaking you down and building you back up. It's just a difference of how they do it, right? Yeah. So theirs might be a little bit more intense than, maybe a Coast Guard might be. They just have different purposes, right? So they just, it is what it is, but it's just a difference, but it's very, very fast, very quick, very intense. So if it's a culture shock, if you ain't never seen one before, you're going to get one. But I mean, if I could go back and see it now that I've already been through it, it might be a little bit easier. Do I want to go through it again? No, not at all. Like I would never go through that again. No, but I don't, if you can mentally focus on, so the way I figured it out, and nobody told me this is what I had to get through. And I've heard this actually later on, like apparently other people have figured this out too when they've gone through the recruit training. And this is what I had to figure out too. And nobody told me this. Nobody said this to me while I was there. Nobody said it to me afterwards. Nobody prepped me before I went there. This is what I had to figure out. Probably after my first week, it was tough after my first week. And I'll tell you this too, they put so much in your head. If they find out that you're in the infantry, they'll tell you, bro, you're going to die. Like you gonna come back in a body bag, like they scare you. I remember writing letters. Mama, call the governor, write the governor. I don't want to be in the infantry anymore. You get me out of here. Find me a new job. I remember writing my mom that. I had no shame in my game. I'm proud that she didn't. I'm proud that I still stuck with it. But yeah, I was scared like you wouldn't believe. But the only thing I remember that got me through that was chow to chow. You wake up in the morning. Just get to breakfast. If you can get through what you got to get through to get to breakfast, they have to feed you. That is rule number one. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They have to feed you. Get to breakfast. Once you get to breakfast, eat your breakfast. Now it might not last but 5 minutes, but get to breakfast. But once breakfast is over, whatever they got for you, just get to lunch. Once you can get to lunch, you're fine. Now once you get to lunch, just eat your food. After lunch, they're gonna kill you for a little bit. Just get to dinner. But after dinner, you got to sleep at some point in time. Rule number one is they can't stop time. You know what I mean? 3 months, be up after a certain amount of time. So just do what you got to do. They can't stop time. So that's just how I got through it. So I just had to get in my own head. As long as they couldn't get in my head, and I was good to go. I was good to go. But don't get me wrong. My kill hat, Staff Sergeant Duarte, which I became really good friends with. I'm still friends with him now. So I hope he sees this podcast. But, and he will, because he's on my Facebook. But there was times it'd be 2:00 in the morning. He'd wake me up in the middle of the night on my rack, just my name tag in front of my face, I'll kill you tomorrow. Like, so, yeah, that wake you up in the middle, yeah, he'd come after me a little bit, but chow to chow, man. You can get chow to chow, you can make it.
So that kind of brings up a point. I know when I got in, I was only 156 pounds. I was a lightweight, and they put me on double rations.
Oh, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, so that's what I want to get into next. Even though they put me on double rations because they needed me to get up and weight, they never gave us time to eat our food anyway. So I've got double the food on my plate that I'm throwing away versus I'm not gaining any extra weight because I'm not able to eat it. So what was it like for you? What kind of weight were you going into boot camp? And did they do the same thing to you, put you on double rations?
So I'll say this. So when I graduated high school, I wrestled 112 pounds, right? And that was natural. So like I didn't cut weight my senior year. So I didn't make the minimum weight requirement to even join the Marine Corps. So the day I went up to Mets to join in, right, I had to drink a gallon of water to gain an extra 6 pounds just to weigh in to make the minimum weight. And I would throw it all up. So when I was in Marine Corps, they made us all take our shirts off in the bathroom, in our skivvies. And they looked at me in 2 seconds, double rats, right away. So I had to wear an extra name tag that said double rats. So I got piled on my plate. There's no way I was going to be able to eat all that food. But they would stand in front of me and just, I would almost want to throw up with so much food. But you're right. You have 30 seconds to try to shovel that in your face. There was no way I was going to make that. But some of the guys who were overweight, it was a great plan for them because I watched guys that literally went in there, they were bigger, that literally had so much loose skin hanging off them. They felt great. They were feeling good. And me, with the amount of push-ups I was doing and the amount, I was toned up, don't get me wrong, but I was still a little guy. You know what I mean? I was mean, lean, mean, and green, but I was still tiny. I'm not gonna lie, I was still tiny.
Yeah. All right, so you make it through boot camp. You're infantry. I believe that's what, 0311, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir.
All right, so you're going to School of Infantry now. So you get done with boot camp and you go on to the School of Infantry. What was that kind of like for you?
So SOI is great. I liked SOI. It was short. It's not that long. It's about 2 months, 2 and a week, I think. Camp Geiger sits right outside Camp Lejeune, which is the East Coast 2nd Marine Division, right there out in Jacksonville, North Carolina. So it sits right outside there. It's a small schoolhouse. It's not big. You get weekend liberties, so you kind of get introduced to the fleet, but you're not. You're in a schoolhouse environment. So Monday through Friday, you're in a schoolhouse environment. You still do field trainings and stuff like that. So when you're in the field, you're in the field. But when you're back in the barracks, you're back in the barracks. So you still do all that stuff. But at a certain time, you kind of get to hang out in the barracks in the evening times and stuff. You get weekend liberties only. So you're not allowed to leave the base and stuff like that Monday through Friday. You have to be signed out, on the weekends if another Marine's taking you out or something like that. There's certain places you can go, you can't go. Of course, they give you a list of the places you can't go. Probably a stupid thing to do for young Marines. Don't give them a list of places you can't go. First place we're probably going to go. I don't know why they do that. Just doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Maybe to hold people accountable in case they do, so they can just hold them accountable when they do. It doesn't make any sense to me. It wasn't bad. I'll tell you this. In my opinion, I joined when we were we were at war in an urban warfare setting. School of Infantry taught me nothing but jungle warfare. So by the time I hit the fleet, they told me to throw everything out the window that I learned there, and they retrained me as fast as possible. Because I tell you, I was in the fleet for maybe another 2 months before I was downrange in Fallujah, Iraq already. So I went through School of Infantry for 2 months learning jungle warfare, and then I hit the fleet. And 2 months, they had to give me a crash course on urban warfare, and I was in Fallujah. So, that was, yeah.
So at this point, before you get orders going to Fallujah, you're getting ready to make it to your duty station. You show up. How long, you said 2 months, but how long till you knew that you were deploying? Did you know where you were deploying at this point? And then did you have a girlfriend at this point? Or, did you have any relationships going on?
No, my first deployment, no. So my first deployment, I wasn't dating anybody or nothing like that. Like, I was kind of just focused on me. I was kind of just doing me. It's kind of weird. Like, you hear rumors of where you're going to deploy. So we thought maybe it was going to be like my unit had just got back from the Helmand province of Afghanistan. So we thought we were going to get maybe like an easier deployment for maybe like our rotation to Okinawa. Every once in a while, a unit will get rotated, infantry unit to Okinawa, 3rd Marine Division. So I thought that would be cool. But Fallujah kicked off, and so I think I think 82nd had been there, 3-5 had been there. They were actually currently there, so we were ripping out 3-5, and so we got orders to Fallujah is what we got. We just didn't know the exact date. Dates change, so they'll tell you, hey, we're going in a month, and then I'd be like, hey, we're going in a month and a half. So dates will change, so you try to tell your family, but then it'll happen, and then all of a sudden you get a solid date, and so then you'll actually know. And so, and that'll you get some time, so you had time to prep for that. And so it wasn't too long after I was with 1-6 we ended up going to Fallujah, and we ended up changing up 3-5. And don't get me wrong, 3-5, man, when we ripped out 3-5, dude, they were in it. I got a buddy of mine that I went through advanced infantry squad leaders course with, and he was with 3-5 when we ripped them out. I didn't know him when we ripped them out, but when I went through the school with him, we had talked about it. And dude, I saw some of those guys when they were over there, dude. Like that, they went through some shit in that deployment, dude. Like they were in it, dude. We got the tail end of it. Don't get me wrong. Like we were kind of just, doing the hearts and minds of that deployment. They were in that house to house stuff. That was tough for them. Man.
Yeah. So kind of walk me through. You're brand new to this. You got a crash course. Now you're stuffed in the middle. You're in a foreign country. It's your first time ever there. You're super young. What is that feeling like running around? And I know during this time frame, because I was there from 03 to 07, like it was a whole different environment than what you hear of, the last 10 years of the war. Rules of engagement were completely different. You're moving and just you're fluent through the country. You're able to do drastically different things than what everybody else did at the tail end. So walk us through what that's like as a young man.
Yes, the ROEs were still a little loose. Don't get me wrong. In like 04, 05, Fallujah, ROEs were still a little loose, but they were starting to get tightened down, right? So like 3-5 had a little bit looser ones than we did. I mean, that's when they put like pamphlets over the city and they were like, get out. And if you're moving, we're shooting. So It cleared the whole city. When we ripped them out, that's when we were letting civilians start to come back in, right? So ours were a little more tightened down. And it was difficult for me. I was like 18, 19 years old. You know what I mean? And so it was my first deployment. So now I've never been out of the United States. I've never been out of the country. So now I'm seeing a whole different culture. So one, I've got a lot of emotions going on. I'm in combat, right? So I'm focused. I'm excited. I'm on it. I'm ready to do my job at a moment's notice. I'm 19 years old. And if I have to take a life, I'm prepared for it. I'm prepared to get into a gunfight. I'm prepared to protect my brother. But I'm also, crazy as it sounds, I'm intrigued by another culture. I'm intrigued by another civilization that's halfway around the world. Like I'm interested in this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, so when I'm sitting on post with an Iraqi cop or a military guy, man, I'm asking questions. I want to learn his language. I want to learn like his culture. I want to eat the food that he's eating. You know what I mean? Like, so honestly, like as rough as it was, and don't get me wrong, it was rough. We slept in crap. It was hot. The living conditions weren't great. Everything was dirty all the time. It wasn't enjoyable, but I still found small little bits of enjoyment throughout the entire deployment. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't my best deployment. I ended up getting in trouble with my unit that I was with my company that I was with, and I ended up getting kicked out of my company, and I got sent to headquarters company, and I ended up doing pretty much standing guard watch at the main compound until the end of the deployment, and I got moved over to Bravo company, where I ended up finishing my career with 1-6.
Do you want to dive into what led to that trouble?
Yeah, I disobeyed a direct order. My battalion commander saved my career on that one, and he didn't think that I needed to be washed out of the Marine Corps, and he thought that he saw some value in me as being a Marine. So I got moved over to Bravo Company, which I will say this: Bravo Company was known for having some of those guys that were just we weren't good in garrison, but you wanted us on your team when we were in combat, and that's what Bravo Company was known for. I went over to Bravo Company, and for the next 4 or 5 years after that, killed it. And multiple meritorious promotions after that. So it didn't hold me back after that. But do I think it's a positive thing, a negative thing that turned into a positive thing in my career? Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Am I ashamed that it happened? Yeah, of course. Am I happy that it happened? Yeah, absolutely. I think it honestly benefited me in the Marine Corps for that. As crazy as that sounds. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're in Bravo Company. You did 2 more tours with Bravo Company, correct?
Yes, sir.
So walk us through what those deployments were like.
So came back with 1-6 and ended up with Bravo Company on my back. So we did a workup with Bravo Company now. So I ended up coming back as a PFC, got busted down. And so I ended up PFC, became Lance Corporal again with Bravo Company. So now my peers, I'm back up with my peers again, back with 1st Platoon in Bravo Company. So we're doing the workup. I ended up going to Ramadi, Iraq. I was now the designated marksman. I had the highest rifle range score in the platoon, so I became the designated marksman. One of my best friends, still best friends to this day, he was a platoon sergeant for 1st Platoon. I think he's now he's a gunner now. He's a chief warrant officer and a gunner now about to retire, I think. Shout out to Stover. But he kind of saw something in me in there, and I was also a first team leader in 2nd Squad. So that was kind of my whole deployment there. That was a rough deployment for me. That was probably one of the worst deployments that I've ever been on. And it wasn't just like a rough deployment, like living conditions or stuff like that. Just the intensity of like the fighting and the amount of people that we lost. And it was just, man, you just couldn't breathe. It didn't matter if you were going on post for 8 hours. It didn't matter if you were going on a patrol, man. Like you were getting into a gunfight, dude. It was happening. When we ripped out the unit that we ripped out, like there were streets that they didn't even go on. Like you had to pop smoke just to even pass the street because they were shot at so much. Like it was pretty intense, man. And we lost a lot of people there. Like Bravo Company did pretty good, but I mean, you get with a unit for so long, you know, so many people in Alpha Company, Charlie Company, Weapons Company, you know, so we had our fair share, man. Like I lost my best friend on that deployment. And I think that was later on in life. I think that was probably a big portion of a downfall for me. Yeah. So yeah, that was a tough deployment for me. That was bad. Yeah. I don't like that one. So
yeah. So what about going to Afghanistan now?
So yeah, Mahdi is where I got both my Purple Hearts. So my second deployment, I ended up catching a round on the side of my face, and then I getting a Purple Heart on that one, and then I got hit by a mortar round. That mortar round, I got some shrapnel, and then collapsed lung, and I shattered some vertebrae and traumatic brain injury. And I was unconscious for a couple of days, and I ended up waking up. And when I woke up, I actually saw Carrie Underwood the day I woke up. She came to visit the Wounded Troops. It was right after she won American Idol. I don't remember really my name. I remember seeing her. I remember seeing the cameras and everything. And there was a big board of a bunch of people, and she was signing autographs for everybody. And she asked me my name. I didn't remember it. She asked me what happened. I didn't remember it. And I was on an IV drip of morphine, and it was a button like every 5 minutes. I couldn't remember a whole lot. And I remember talking. She looked beautiful. It was great. And there's a guy that had a bowl cut, and he's like French accent, and he wouldn't leave my bed, and he wouldn't stop talking to me, and kept asking me questions I didn't know the answer to. And he kept asking me, and I just remember looking at his IV drip and seeing this button. I just remember hitting it, and I just remember dozing off. And that was it. And then remember all these guys, when I woke up, they were all bragging about this autograph from Carrie Underwood. Pulled mine out, started looking at theirs, and mine was the only one that had a heart on it. So I thought we were getting married. And then I read the tabloids, and she married that hockey player from Canada. So if she ever thinks she's getting a chance again, she can kiss that one goodbye, because I ain't second place. You know what I mean? But no, that was the extent of that deployment. So that's why it was also a really rough one. But also leading into my next deployment, I was supposed to go on a med board after that one, and I thought I was going to get medically separated from the Marine Corps, and my body just was not there, and I didn't know where our next deployment was going to be. And so the Marine Corps does MUSE. So sometimes we'll jump on a ship with the Navy, and we'll float over, and you get a lot of libo ports, right? So you get to stop in a lot of different countries, and you get to go experience actual real countries that you're not fighting in. And so that's what my recruiter initially promised me, right? When you talk to and all the different branches, that you get to see the world instead of not just the buttholes of the world. So I was excited about that, right? So I was like, man, this med board's I'm not going to be able to do this. And you're not, usually in the infantry, you do 2 deployments, you rotate out, you do a B billet, you pick up staff sergeant, and then you end up coming back. And it's not what I joined the Marine Corps for. Eventually I wanted to be a staff sergeant, sure, but I just wanted to keep fighting as long as I could. And I heard through the grapevine that we were going on a MU, and we're going to Afghanistan. I don't want to see what the Taliban's all about. You know what I mean? I ain't never been to Afghanistan either, but going on a MU, so I might get to see all these ports. And I looked at my First Sergeant Henry. God love him. I'm still good friends with him to this day. Hope he sees me too. I said, First Sergeant, I said, I'm at this med board. I was like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, they're going to separate me out. And he said, well, why don't you go sit in your truck and think about it? And so I sat in my truck and I took a nap. And so I missed my med board on purpose. And then we ended up deploying, I think like 3-4 weeks later. And by the time they ended up catching up with me, like I was already downrange. And so I ended up getting a page 11 for missing my med board. And it was kind of got swept under the rug. And I'm pretty sure my First Sergeant helped me out with that one. But I had to sign a page 11 for that stuff. And it was cool. I ended up doing another deployment. I ended up, going on that deployment in Afghanistan. That was a rough one too, but it wasn't like a heavy intensified like fighting and stuff. But I mean, we ripped out the British. They said Garmser, and the Southern Hemmen couldn't be taken over. They tried for so long, and it just was impossible. Man, we had that city in 3 weeks, dog. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
We one side, we pushed it, and I mean, they kicked all the civilians out, and they stood to fight us. Don't get me wrong, and we had gunfights, and we had ambushes and all that stuff, but it wasn't as intense as Ramadi, and it wasn't crazy like that. But I mean, we weren't living in houses or nothing crazy. I mean, it was mud huts and bamboo roofs, and they were dropping mortars on us, and they had mortar teams and stuff like that. And we had 100-pound packs on our backs running through wadis and stuff like that, and poppy fields, and that's all we had. But that was our living conditions, and it was a day packed with 8 to 10 days of gear, and that's all we had for 180 days. But baby wipes is what I showered with for a good quarter of the year. But I mean, it wasn't a bad deployment. I mean, Bravo Company did pretty good. We didn't lose anybody that deployment. You know, we had some wounded, but we did all right. And so after that deployment, then I came home, and then what was the next step, right? I wanted to reenlist. You know, I was dating my daughter's mother at the time. She was living with me, and I wanted to reenlist. My bonus, I think, as a sergeant was 40,000. If I stayed with 1-6 and did in the infantry and did one more combat deployment, right, they're going to give me an extra 20 grand. So my bonus was 60,000 to stay in for another 4 years and do another deployment with 1-6. And my daughter's mother at the time was pregnant with my oldest. And I went to go sign my reenlistment package. But it was right after October. And Barack Obama at the time, he had taken away all the bonuses in the military to rebudget for the fiscal year. So my budget went from 60,000 to zero. And so when I went to sign the paper, it said zero. And they got it and signed it at the time. I looked at it and I was like, I asked the question, and they're like, yeah, you could petition to file for your bonus to come back because you had applied for it beforehand. They said, but it might take some time. I was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to sign this for zero just in case. So I decided, since my daughter was being born in my body and stuff, I was like, I'm going to go ahead and make the choice to get out. And I think Cassie, my daughter's mother, she wanted me to. She wanted to go back home with her family and her friends, you know, because she was pregnant. She was pretty pregnant, 6 months, you know.
So what was that transition like? How now you've spent the last 6 years in the Marine Corps, you've done 3 combat tours, you've got a child on the way, you're transitioning out, but then you end up in the contract world. How'd that work?
So I didn't end up in the contract world right away. I ended up in the contract world kind of by chance. A buddy of mine, Michael Welch, he was a buddy of mine that I was a boot with in Bravo Company. He had got recruited on to Blackwater for a little bit. He was already working with them for a little while, and I became a correctional officer for the state of Georgia. I was doing that, living in Georgia, and I saw him on Facebook, and he was posting some stuff, and I was like, man, how'd you get on with that? Because I was kind of interested. Now, I had worked for another company, a security group. My old battalion commander, he was leaving right as I got dropped into 1-6, and I heard through the grapevine that he had said when he left 1-6, any 1-6 Marines wants that contracting job, hit me up when you leave. And I never really personally met him. He left, and I was a boot. And so I just did my due diligence and my research, and I got his email. And I emailed him, and I said, hey, I heard you would contract anybody. I heard you would hire anybody that was an old 1-6 Marine. And he got me on a job, and he got me on a contract right away in Kandahar. And so it was a site security manager contract job. It was about $8,000 a month. Not bad. But I was gone a lot. Wasn't really working. And I only did that for like 6 months, and I came home. It was a bad contract. I didn't really like it, and I came home. So then I went back to being a correctional officer, and then I talked to my buddy Micah, and he kind of referred me to the recruiter with Blackwater. It was actually known as Academy at the time. I think it had changed names a couple times. It was Z at the time, U.S. Training Center, and then it became Academy, formerly known as Blackwater, if you will. And so then, so I ended up talking to the recruiter, had to go through the whole process with that, the background checks, all that stuff. It's pretty intense. I'm not going to lie. It's like they constantly will do a background check with you, even while you're in the training course, even while you're up there. Like, I saw guys getting pulled out. Like, we were weeks into the training, and they were like, hey, we found something, you're out. Like, it's pretty intense with that stuff. So we had to go up there. There's qualifications on everything that you have to do. So it was pretty intense. And once you get through all that stuff and you qualify and you're good, you still have to wait on when the deployment date is. So it was kind of different. The first contract I was on, it was different. I had to have a black passport, you know, for a 3-letter agency. So it was that one, but that one never really fell through. That one kind of went ghost. So I was waiting for a while, and I really wasn't making. You don't make money when you're sitting at home, right? So you only make when you're downrange. So when I was sitting here waiting, I was like, I can't do this. So I was like, I need to jump ship. I need to jump on a different contract. Same company, just different contract. So I talked to some people when I jumped on a WPPS contract through the State Department, which is still with Blackwater. So I just needed a tourist passport on that one because the black passports are getting held up. And so I jumped on that one, and that one was in Kabul, and it was on a high threat diplomatic security one. So pretty much I jumped on that one, and I was on Hammer 9 out there just picking up security details out of Kabul. And then I did that one for probably about 6 months with Hammer 9. I did 2 rotations with Hammer 9. And before I got recruited from Crispy, he was my shift lead off Hammer 5. Shout out to him too, because he pulled me from Hammer 9. And so he was the Hammer 5 was the direct security detail for one of the 4 U.S. ambassadors over there in Afghanistan. And so I was on one of his team, and I think there were about 15 of us on his team. So I did that for quite a while. And you do, at first it was 90-30s, and then we ended up doing 105s, 95s. I think.
Nice. So how did you end up getting out of that world? How did you get out of the contract world?
I ended up getting hurt over there. So I ended up messing my back up. So the same injury I had pretty much had from Ramadi, I ended up messing my back up again over there. They do have like kind of it's not like a physician, but it's somebody that can kind of prescribe you stuff, but not. And so like I ended up finding out that I was allergic to a certain medication, and it caused me to have a seizure. So I ended up going over to a French hospital, which is not pleasant over in Afghanistan because nobody speaks English. All the TVs are in French, and all the magazines they give you are written in French. So it wasn't fun. So I ended up getting sent home on DBA, which is a government disability. And they're not allowed to work, not allowed to do anything. And that took about 4 years where I wasn't allowed to really do anything, which is probably the start to my entire downfall. And then I ended up settling out to where, I settled out with the insurance company. And then, that was the end of my contract days after that.
So you just brought up something about the start of your fall, and I want to dive into that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
What was the fall? What led you to starting to fall? And how did you recognize it?
So when I got put on DBA, so the government disability, I was making a lot of money with Blackwater, right? So it was well into so it was like well over 100K a year, right? So like I maxed that out. So the government disability, so between my VA disability and the government disability, it was a lot of money I was making a month, but I wasn't allowed to work legally. So I was bored. And I was also on a lot of medication, and the VA for my back pain and stuff, they didn't want to do surgery right away. They wanted to do a lot of therapy to try to fix it prior to the surgery. In doing that, there was a lot of pain management. So the VA, and I never, don't get me wrong, to be transparent with you, right? Like I was really never a drug user in high school. Like I'd maybe smoked weed with a buddy of mine here and there, but I never really liked it. I really wasn't into that in high school or even the Marine Corps, nothing like that. But when I got out and I was, my back pain and stuff like that, the VA had give me, pain pills. And so I'd taken them, like prescribed normally. But then I tried to go to the gym and stuff, and it hurt and stuff would suck. But over time, it was years on the pain meds. Over time, my prescription started to run short sooner and sooner and sooner. And then the way I was taking my medication changed. And the people I was hanging out with changed. And it was probably because they liked the medication that I was getting. And my crowd I was surrounding myself with wasn't the best. And I was looking for validation. I was living in Georgia, where that's where my daughter's mother was from. And when we split up, all the friends I thought we had, they weren't my friends. Those were people that she grew up with, you know what I mean? And I was by myself. I was alone. And all of those people down there I'm not saying they're bad people, you know what I mean? They didn't know, they didn't want to pick sides. And I don't blame any of those. I didn't want to leave my daughter. It's the only thing I had to hold on to. And I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know what to do. And so I tried my best to hold tight, and I made a lot of bad choices. I tried to find comfort in the wrong things. Yeah, one thing led to another. I started taking my medication, and then I started snorting my medication, and then I started hanging out with people that were taking the medication, and they were putting it on a spoon and a needle. I said, no, that'll never be me, man. No way. That'll never be me. And then I eventually got to a point where these are the only people that like me. These are the only people that care about me, which wasn't true, but that's what I thought. Maybe I'll try it. And the first time I tried it, man, I've been wasting this the whole time. This is the only way I'll ever do it again. And that was the end of it. And then after that, that was the start to the end right there. That was, then the pills were, I felt like I was safer with it because it was already medicated. It was already dosed from the doctor. So I knew I wasn't in trouble. Like I knew I wasn't scared because I knew it was regulated, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't doing it the right way. I was disgusted, right? Like I couldn't look myself in the mirror. So I just buried myself more into it. Like my hygiene was out of whack. Like I wasn't eating. I wasn't drinking fluids. Like I was wearing sweatpants and hoodies in June and July to hide my body because I was losing so much weight. Like I was so embarrassed. I show up to my daughter's functions barely. And in June, like just everything sunken in, like I'd look like a skeleton. I could only imagine like if my daughter could see it now, like I understand why she doesn't talk to me now. You know what I mean? Like the embarrassment, like it's tragic. So then one thing turned to another, like the medication, like I would run out of my prescription and then you couldn't find it anymore. And then you start buying it from people and then you can't find that. And then then one drug turns to another because your body hurts and you don't want to hurt anymore. And then next thing you know, it's a spiral into doing multiple drugs, methamphetamines, anything you can get your hands on at that point in time. So you don't hurt anymore. And then it turned into a thing to where, no, I'm not doing any drugs that are illegal. I'm going to Walmart buying cans of computer cleaner dust off and inhaling it. So, you just, and it was to a point where like there was times I lived in my truck for 3 days in a Walmart parking lot, just inhaling it until I passed out. And then I'd wake up and do it again until I passed out. There's 3 consecutive, a week long, to where I would wake up and I'd have hundreds of cans in my vehicle and not recollect the last week. And yeah. I'd have 75 missed phone calls from my mom, and she lives 30 minutes away from me. You know what I mean? Like those are the dark days I'm talking about. 7 failed attempts at rehab. It was absolutely crazy. It was nuts. And, there's a lot of like, scattered memories there, I guess you could say. There's a lot of tragic memories there, I guess. There's a lot of bad things that happened, man. Those cans, like I got burns on my body. I've had skin grafts from frostbite so bad that I've had to have surgery to remove. Like it was terrible, man. It was really terrible.
So what, I guess at this point in your life, obviously, how was you mentally? I mean, I know that the source that you were using to cope was the drugs, the inhaling, this type of stuff. Was you having suicidal ideations at this point? Was you just looking at life like I'd be better off not being here? What was your mental state like?
Yeah, so I think all the way back from when I lived in Georgia, probably when I really noticed that I noticed that I had a problem, right? But I never really wanted to admit it.
Yeah.
So probably all the way back to when I first noticed I had a problem was probably when I realized that my prescription ran out a little early than it should have. That's probably when my first suicidal thoughts have probably always came into my head. Now, I'm not lying. Like, my mom can probably attest. My sister could probably attest that I've always had the thoughts in my head. You know what I mean? Like, back in the day, like, they were always there. And I'm not saying that they're naturally from Justin, right? Like, that's not Justin thinking. Like, I naturally don't ever want to take myself out of this life, right? But I think that they were more drug infused and more like, I just don't have an option. I will say, like, there was times that I was screaming with a sidearm to the side of my head, in my truck, just, I'm done. Like, I'm ready. You know what I mean? Like, just, like, I'm done. Even though my oldest daughter doesn't speak to me, like, that was the only thing that saved me back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just, and it's not that my sister will tell you this, and she's probably right. And my mom will probably tell you this too, and she's probably right. I never had a problem going over to Iraq and firing a weapon at somebody that fired at me, right? Like, that's justified in my mind. I'm okay with that. It sucks. You know what I mean? I wish the world didn't have to come to that. That's horrible. I wish nobody would have to do that. I can justify that in my heart and my mind. I can get that. I don't think I have the balls to do it to myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a choice you can't take back. And that's
sure.
a tough one. That's a big one. Do I think in that mental state, drug infused, it could happen? Probably. You're not rash, right? You're not making the right choice. You're not thinking clearly. I think that the thought of my daughter waking up the next day saying what happened to my dad and why, I couldn't live with. And I couldn't let her live with, I'll say. I think that probably was my saving grace throughout those times. So I'll credit that to it. Even though she won't speak to me, I still say she probably saved my life, more than one time. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to say that was probably a decade ago that's ever crossed my mind. That's, yeah. But
yeah,
I promise you, like, I think there's more people that have thought about it that will admit in this world. I think the thought crosses people's minds more than people like to admit, but yeah, it's a real thing, but I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're actually right on that. There's more people that think about it. Could be passive thoughts, could be just, trauma induced. It could be problem induced, but people do have those thoughts quite often, and a lot of people won't admit it. The next thing I want to go into is, so you've unveiled all this. You've got all these situations going on. You're looking for an avenue. You're looking for some place to overcome this. You're addicted to drugs. You're drinking alcohol like crazy. You've got these thoughts. What was the next stage? Like, how did you end up going to a Christian-based program called Mighty Oaks? What introduced you to that? What even led you to that place?
So I'll first say, I think my mom has helped me probably more than anybody in my entire life. She's probably the only person that's never given up on me, other than probably a select other few. She's looked for programs left and freaking right for me. If I'm thinking back, I don't remember how I got introduced to Mighty Oaks. I don't remember. I got introduced to Mighty Oaks through somebody, and I don't remember who. I want to say it might be Sean, a buddy of mine, Sean, that I met up in Wilmington, introduced me to Mighty Oaks. He knew somebody through Mighty Oaks, and he gave me the link. And it was a desperate move, man. It was a desperate move. Like, we tried Wilmington Treatment Center. We tried one up in Asheville, North Carolina. Like, we tried 4 other places. Nothing was faith-based, though. Don't get me wrong. Nothing was faith-based. And this wasn't even like Mighty Oaks wasn't even like it wasn't a rehab. It wasn't, this was totally a shot in the dark, random, off the wall, not rehab, but it was a retreat.
Yeah.
And so I looked at my mom and I was like, Mom, this is not something it's not even something that's in line with what I need. And she said, maybe this is exactly what you need. And it didn't cost us anything. We didn't have to pay for anything. It was, the pictures looked like it was an amazing cabin, and it was a lake, and it was beautiful. Everything was structured. Everything was lined up. Everything was laid out. Like, the communication with the people, like, was great. And I got dropped off at the airport, like, there was no tears from my mom like there normally is. Like, I saw the comfort for some reason when she dropped me off, which it's shameful to say. Like, it's not shameful. Like, I'm thankful that my mom has always been there, but at the age I was at that time, my mom shouldn't be taking care of me at that time. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
I'm thankful and I'm blessed that she has been, because I probably wouldn't be here if she wasn't. But Mighty Oaks was different, to say the least. But no, I went to Ohio. And because there's a lot of different locations. Ohio was just the one that was going on. And not everybody gets to go. Don't get me wrong. Not everybody gets to go. And so I was blessed to go. And it was actually during the time, I think Trump was going against Biden. I think it was one I went to that one. Mm-hmm. And we actually got to watch it. I stayed up till midnight on that one. But no, I was in a cabin with 2 other guys and one of the instructors. And it was great. It was a week long. We got to row in boats. We got to fish. One guy got baptized. We got to swim in there. It was cold. Guy got baptized. Yeah. But just the structure. We got to tell our stories if we wanted to. Just the structure, the base. You were one of the instructors. You weren't even my instructor. I didn't even have one-on-ones with you. I didn't even have anything. I don't even know how I connected with you, but for some reason, like, I made eye contact with you like 1,000,001 times, and for some reason, I'd crack like small little jokes that you just got. So I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it was you were a ranger, and I thought that was cute or something, but I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I don't know. I got your phone number. For some reason, like, we got each other's phone numbers before I left. I don't know. And like, even my instructor, like, I asked to reach out to him when I left, and he said he had too many people or something like that. And I don't know if I contacted you or you contacted me, like, after we left, but I was going through something. It might have been like at the right time, and you reached out. You're like, hey, how are you doing? I was like, actually, I'm not doing too good right now. Yeah. And it was random. And you're like, hey, I got an idea. Why don't you come stay at my house? And I'm like, what? And then I brushed it off, and I was like, nah, I'm good. And it was like another month or 2 went by later, and like, you reached back out, and you're like, how you doing? And I was like, still crappy, still not doing good. And you're like, take me up on it. Come into my house. I looked at my mom, and she's like, why don't you go? And I was like, I guess I'll go. Let's go. Let's do it. Yeah, coming to Michigan, where I've never been to. And I ended up staying there for like 2.5 months, almost 3 months, I think.
Yeah. So that's actually a funny story. I'm married.
You weren't even my instructor or nothing, dude. We had no, yeah.
Yeah. So it's weird, man. The dynamic of how all this stuff plays out. I'm a team leader. We have our early morning meetings. We do a lot of our discussions and things like that. We share with all the other team leaders. So we come together and we're compiling the classes, and we're compiling, notes on people, and it's a constant evaluation. And I'm not going to give any more feedback on that, but your name came up a couple times, and I'm the type of guy I evaluate everybody in the room anyways. And I remember we're in Ohio, I'm sitting back by the ping pong table, and I'm watching, I'm gazing the room, I'm reading the room, and I'm picking up on, people who are really engaged and people who are withdrawn, doing other things. And you're right, man. I'm evaluating the room, and you and I kind of made contact multiple times. And then we had short conversations. I didn't spend a lot of time with you. I think we talked maybe once for an extended period of time outside by the fire pit or something like that, and kind of moved on. But towards the end, the very last day, I think we kind of connected a little bit more, had some one-on-one conversations, and that was, we moved on. And I was telling my wife, here I am back at home now. I always do this. I try to check in with guys from one class to the next, like, man, checking in on you. How you doing? You hit me up right away and told me pretty much not doing good at all, And so in my head, I'm thinking, dude, I want to help this guy. Like I heard somewhat of your story. I mean, you didn't go full in depth when you talked, but I just felt connected, and I'm like, man, I got to help him. So I had this harebrained idea that, dude, I'm going to get my house, and you didn't even know the whole backstory of this, but I never told my wife. I'm married. I've got 4 kids. I got this harebrained idea. I book you a ticket, and I'm flying you to Michigan. And this is all unfolding on, I can't remember if it's Saturday night or Sunday. And you're boarding a plane and flying here in between Sunday morning church service and Sunday night church service. Yeah. You've never been in, probably, I don't think, in your entire life in a Pentecostal church. Yep. And so I tell you, I'm talking to you on the phone. You're getting ready to fly out. I'm like, I'm going to pick you up this afternoon in South Bend Airport, and we're rolling straight to church. And you're like, okay, let's do this, not knowing what you're getting into, man. And me and my boys show up in suits and ties to the South Bend Airport and pick you up. We throw you in the truck, and boom, there we go. Your first time in Michigan.
I'm in a flannel.
Yeah. Yeah, your first time in Michigan, you're landing yourself in a Pentecostal church, man. It was crazy. And that's where you stayed for the next couple months. And I kind of want to hear your side of this now. For the next couple months, you're living in a stranger's home. What was that like, and how did that help?
So when I went up there,
yeah,
culture shock all over again, right? So one, I've never met more inviting people in my life. You have the most amazing children I've ever met in my life. They're from ground up, top notch kids. Don't get me wrong, they still kids. Bailey's a wildfire. Yeah, Braxton's a little turd too. I like him too. But you got great kids. But just the amount of love and support was amazing. But your church too, though. Like it's like the first time I went to the church. Like that night we went to church, I believe. And everybody already knew who I was. Everybody. It was like felt like a homecoming. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It felt like everybody was like it was like a welcome home, and it was like feeling I got. And man, you couldn't have picked better songs that were sung. Like I forgot her name. It's Brian's wife. What's his name? Or what's her name?
Becky, or Bonnie.
Somebody was singing "Somebody's Praying You Through," and I was thinking about my mom. Because I know that's what she was doing when I was going on that plane, and like the whole sermon that night, like it was talking about like the struggles in life, and like you're in the right place, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me right now, like he's talking to me, you know what I mean? Like yeah. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now. It's like everything was talking to me, like you are exactly where you're supposed to be right now. Like just chill, like just chill and take in exactly what you're supposed to take in. Just relax. Like, I got you. Like, everything's fine. And so I kind of just, at that point in time, like, my head was so, like, for so long, my head has been so wrapped around, like, get it figured out. Hurry up, get it figured out. Like, you're on a time crunch. And that was the only time for so long, like, I could just sit back and go, just be patient, Like, the Bible says be patient. Like, and that was the only time I felt so secure to where I could just be like, just let it evolve. It's going to happen. Just let it evolve. And don't get me wrong, towards the end, I think I kind of forced things, and left. But stuff worked out, man. And like that, I credit so much to that part of my life, to what I have now. Like, you have no idea, because if that didn't happen, man, I don't know, dude. You could what if it all day long, right? You could what if situation all day long. And if there's so many things that didn't happen in my life, dude, I don't know. So there's a lot of growing up, I think, in a short time I did up there. I've been a cigarette smoker since I was 16. I didn't smoke a single cigarette in 2 months when I was up there. I did, I think the first week. I was a vapor. You know what I mean? I'm vaping now, don't get me wrong, but I quit vaping up there. The boy said, hey, stop vaping. I'll throw it away. I threw it away. Like, it was It was just, we went to the gym every single day. You know what I mean? Like, it was just the camaraderie, like the laughs. You know what I mean? Like, I never thought you could have fun without, like, in a group setting, without, like, having a glass of wine or, like, having a beer with your buddies or, like, you know what I mean? Like, have a barbecue with it. So, but to be able to play 6 decks of Uno on a night, you know what I mean? And be able to laugh hysterically about the dumbest things in the world blew my mind. And I've never eaten more honey buns from a gas station in my life than when I'm with Thicker Than a Snicker here. You know what I mean? So that's why, so I had some of the best times of my life. I've never seen somebody try so hard in a trip from the gym back, wave at so many people just to see how many reactions we get. I still got the video. I've never seen somebody sit in an icy road, Bruce Kimbrell, that you're turning as oncoming cars are coming. I've never, so I've had some of the best times of my life up there, man. Like, that was amazing.
Yeah,
And it was strange. Like, my wife would probably kill me if I said, hey, I'm going to bring a stranger from another state and just live with us. By the way, I have 3 kids here and a teenage daughter. Like, that's weird to do, but you did it. So that's crazy.
Yeah, you wouldn't. So I'm going to say something I hope I don't regret, but you wouldn't believe how many people, because I told you I came up with this idea on a whim. Never did I ask anybody for input. I just said, this is what I'm doing. People would tell me, like, bro, you don't know what you're getting into. And it's weird, man, because it's like I just felt like I had to do this. Push past that now. Dude, we meshed like we were brothers, like we had grown up our whole life. You talk about sitting in the living room. Man, my kids called you Uncle Juddy. Yeah, they still do to this day, man. We still stay in contact. It's a crazy dynamic. It was what I needed at the time as well as what you needed. I had a lot of stuff going on. Never did I ever think at that point in my life that I would need to bring somebody into my house. We had so many situations going on.
How did you need that?
Man,
You got 9 million things going on in your life. How did you need that extra added thing? How did that make sense for me? Because to me, that would be an extra added stress. So make that make sense to me on how you needed that extra stress.
Well, you lived in the house. There was a lot of stuff going on. I was struggling, and what I needed at that time was a distraction. I needed something to be accountable for. And by bringing you in, it forced me to stay on track. We religiously went to the gym, meal prepped for an entire week, chicken and rice. We had, got a little after a while, but we had such a regiment going on that now I forgot about some of the things that were going on. We had a massive ice dam happen on our house, and you're talking, I had just finished our entire house, just got everything done.
The roof leak?
The roof leak.
Yeah.
Just got everything done, and bro, it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Battled with insurance for a very long time. Not only that, it's just there was a lot going on, and some of it I won't go into right now because this is focused on you, but I needed to have my direction adjusted so that I wasn't focused on all of my bad things, and I was accountable for someone else to keep them on track. And by doing that, it took my focus off that, and I was no longer so dwelling, because sometimes I can dwell on something so much and I get tunnel vision on that, and then that little problem gets magnified into a ginormous problem.
Makes
so
sense.
it was great, man. The only thing that I would say is the hardest part is listening to you sneak upstairs in the middle of the night and steal 2 or 3 honey buns. No. So, but man, we had an amazing time. We really did. There were some things that transpired later that shifted, and you went back to the Carolinas. But I would still say overall, no matter what, we were still inseparable. We might have had some minor disagreements and things like that, but it turned out, even to this day, we're still great friends.
It wasn't even minor. I went back on a bad path and had to refine myself again. That's what it was. Call it what it is.
Let's talk about the next transition. So you just left living with me. You're transitioning back home. Some things transpired. How'd that go?
So coming back home, man, it was. So I came back home. I ended up, I'm back at home living with mom, right? Ended up having to go back to rehab again, dude. I ended up going back to rehab again, and pretty much that was the last time. This was a faith-based rehab. This is the only one I've ever been to that was faith-based. It's the last time I ever did it. And this one really took a hold on me. This one was different. So this one, wasn't just like a little short program. You're out on your own. So this was structured a little different. Don't get me wrong. It was normal rehab programs are very, very expensive, right? And so my mom and everybody in my family and me, we've always looked through the VA or anything that can help or a better program. There's just not a lot out there. You talk to a lot of veterans, they'll tell you the same thing. There's just not a lot out there. Some of these programs are $10,000-$15,000, for a 30-day treatment program. That's expensive. Cheapest one I ever found was like $6,000, and pay out of pocket. That sucks. And then it does. For 28 to 30-day program, you don't really get a whole lot out of it. You get what you put into it, and you put a lot into it, and you still won't get a whole lot out. So this one was, it was for 28 days, but it was $800. Faith-based. It's called Christian. It started out as Christian Recovery Group, but then it turned into Beach House Recovery out of Calabash, which is right here, right where I live, pretty much. So it's right down the road from my mom too. So, but the thing about this is, your first month, don't get me wrong, no cell phone, no nothing. You're in first phase. There's 3 different phases, right? So your first phase, you're in a big house, big group with everybody, right? You're mandatory. You're structured like the military. You wake up at a certain time. You have to make your bed. You have to have a certain amount of classes. You have to go to a certain amount of meetings. You have to do all these structured things. You have to do a Bible study at a certain time of day. You have all these things in your first phase, right? Then after your first month, you have a choice. After your first month, depending on how you do, you're eligible to either leave because you can go after you got what you paid for, or you can stay. But if you're eligible, if they allow you to stay, like you didn't cause any problems or anything, and you want to stay, they allow you to work. And now they have a lot of restaurants and stuff, and this is what they do. And I like this, right? So they humble you. They humble you a lot, right? So I'm used to being an HVAC, making really, really great money. So this place has a lot of different jobs that they work with the restaurants. Now the restaurants like this because they get cheap labor from a lot of drug addicts, right? So they like it. But also, this is the purpose for the drug addicts. It teaches you to, 1, be humble, but 2, find your purpose again. Because what does a drug addict lose when they lose themselves? They lose their purpose. They don't feel like they have value anymore. So what happened with me is I was eligible and I decided to stay. So I could have left, but I decided to stay. But when you stay, you now have to pay rent. So you have to get a job. Now rent's not expensive. Don't get me wrong. It's like $125 a week. Okay. But they still feed you. You still get your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner. They got people that donate the food to the food pantry and stuff. So you get to snack when you want to, and you're eating well. Don't get me wrong. It's nothing like that. You get all that stuff. You're allowed to go to the grocery store, get your own stuff. You get your own money in your pocket now because you're working, but you're not working like you think. My first job that I was the most appreciative of, and the only job I had there for the months I was there, I was a dishwasher at a restaurant for $9 an hour. And let me tell you something. I was so proud of that damn job. And I was the best dishwasher you ever saw. I'd wash them, bro. I made it a point to wash them dishes and make sure that whole table was clear before them servers brought them next dishes back because I didn't want it to get stacked up. I wanted to make him so proud. I found my purpose again. You know what I mean? Like, I love the structure that they had. And you don't make much off $9 an hour, but I made my rent. You know what I mean? I paid my cell phone. I finally got my I got a secured credit card. And it was only $200 a month. And it was secured, but I was able to pay it off every month, so it allows you to not become a millionaire, but you find yourself again and you be able to get a great foundation built. Some of those guys stay there for 2 years, 3 years. They're a little scared to leave a little bit, or they want to build a little bit more.
Yeah.
I stayed for quite a few months, not as long as some people, but I stayed past my normal time that you don't have to. And you get to move into a house, you get to move into an apartment off the it's still in the same little neighborhood, but it's kind of just within walking distance of the main house. But you have to clean your house. You know what I mean? You have duties. It's reasserting yourself back into society, I guess. It's kind of like boot camp, I guess. You're breaking yourself back down because you already did that to yourself with drugs, right? And alcohol. Yeah. Now this program is just rebuilding you back into society. And it's rebuilding you back up. So I credit a lot to them too. And they do a lot for the community. They don't ask for much. You got to admit, like, for a 28-day, 30-day program, $800, that's pretty reasonable for a lot of people around here. Not a lot of people get into that program. It's pretty nice to have that availability around here. The restaurants are more than happy to have these people because I promise you, these are the hardest working people at those restaurants. They're giving everything that they want. They want to do good for these people. They want a new purpose,
Yeah.
So that was a great opportunity for me. I stayed there for quite a while. I got done with that. I ended up leaving that program. I moved back into my mom's house. Still not proud of that, but it is a part of my story and part of my life. I ended up going to my mom's house. A buddy of mine left the program with me, moved into my mom's house too. My mom's got a huge heart. You know her. She wanted to help him too. And so we lived there. I wanted to be a server. There was a little bit more money in that because I wanted to finish getting my barber's license. I've been doing HVAC for quite a long time, but I wanted to get out of it and get my barber's license because I was close to it. So I wanted some fast, quick money. So I got a serving job at a local restaurant in North Myrtle Beach, but I didn't get enough shifts. So I wanted to get another serving job. So I went down to another restaurant and I did an interview. And the girl that interviewed me, I thought she was hot as all get out. And she didn't think I had enough serving experience, so she wouldn't hire me as a server. She wanted to hire me as a food runner. And I didn't want to do that. And but I took the job because I thought she was gorgeous. And so my first training shift, I was working as a training shift and as a food runner. And I was trying to flirt with her, and she wasn't having it. And I started asking employers about her, the manager, and they said she won't date anybody she works with. That's just her rule. And she looked like she was mad all the time, like she was going through something. And so I tried to get her phone number, and that wouldn't happen because I told her I didn't have my license. She had needed a copy of it for taxes. And I said, I'll text it to you. I got a picture of it. I had it in my wallet. I just didn't want to tell her that. And so I said, I'll text it to you. Trying to get her number. She said, no, you can send it to my work email. And I was like, all right, well, I just didn't send it. And so I waited till she got busy. And I said, did you get it? She said, no. So I said, what's your email? And I purposely spelled it wrong right in front of her and send, knowing she wouldn't get it. And so then later in the evening, I was like, making sure she got it. She said, no. I said, you're going to need it. So she finally gave me her number. And so I texted her a picture of my license. And then the very next day, I sent her a text and said, hey, I just want to let you know I found employment elsewhere. I will no longer be working there, but what are you doing for lunch? And she said, oh, that sucks. I was going to move you to a serving position. I was like, that's my bad, but still, what are you doing for lunch? And so we went out for lunch, and 3 years later, we're married and hanging out. So I worked out one.
That's awesome. That is awesome. What a story, man.
Worth every bit of it, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, persistent.
I'll tell you that. I've never worked harder for any phone number in my entire life.
Oh, that's good. All right, so I want to touch on one more thing. You grew up going to a Catholic church and kind of didn't carry that through the military, didn't carry that through anywhere else. But now you're living a life that's based on faith, right? You go to church. You guys, I talk to you. Sometimes we text on Sundays, and you're, hey man, I'm heading to church right now. And how does that play prevalent in your life right now? How important is going to church to you?
So I grew up Catholic my whole life, and it's not. I'll say this. So I grew up Catholic my whole life because the whole Goeden side of my family is Catholic, and that's just how I was raised. I got baptized as a baby, not because I chose to, just because that's how Catholics baptized. It's just all I knew. Right? I went to CCD. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate CCD, like on Wednesday nights. That's just how I learned the Bible and stuff. But as I got older in the military, my dog tags say Roman Catholic. That's just because when I was 18, that's what I was. As I got older, there's certain things. When I started going to church as an adult, I'll say this, I got to be careful here what I say, because I don't want to downgrade anybody, and I don't want to downgrade any religion, right? So I'm just speaking from my personal feelings, what I've seen and what I like and don't like. And now I'm not putting anything down or what they don't. I'm just saying what I like and what I don't like. From a kid, it was boring to me, as it is probably for every kid, right? It was very traditional, very rudimentary. I don't get anything out of the Catholic service. It's just very the same thing over and over with maybe 10 minutes of preaching. I don't get anything out of that. So as I got older, I stopped going to a Catholic church. I never really went to a Baptist. I went to a Baptist church a couple times. I really liked it. The service was really good. I got more into it. I got a lot out of it.
Yeah.
I will say, when I went up to Michigan and I went to the Pentecostal church with you, I got a ton out of it. I like the environment. I like the service. I like what is being told to me. I like what I'm getting out of it. I like the energy. I like the environment. Now, there's some things about the Pentecostal church I'm not going to do or I don't like. I'm not running up and down the halls. I'm not going to say I'm not going to like that. I'm not going to do that. But I do like the environment. I like what they're telling me. I like what they believe. I like what they believe. I like what they see. I like what Baptists believe. I'm not going to sit on here and tell you I'm going to say I'm this denomination, I'm that I'm not. I'm not a Baptist. I'm not a Pentecostal. I'm not a Catholic. I'm not a Lutheran. I'm not saying that. I'm a faithful person in Jesus Christ and God. That's what I'll say. I go to a Baptist church right now, and I go to a Baptist church because that's the church my mama wants to go to. And I take my mom to church every Sunday. My mom is a Lutheran. Well, she was. She's now baptized Baptist. I'll say that. She did that last year. She went to a Baptist church with my stepdad. My stepdad ended up passing away. I want to say it's 3 years now. He ended up taking his own life. And after that happened, she had asked me to take her to church. And there was a church on the old country road she decided she always wanted to go to. And so I took her to that church, and we just have never stopped going to that church. I love my pastor. I love the community. I love the church we go to. When I met Haley, she wasn't really into church. That girl has now bought a study Bible. She reads that thing for 45 minutes every single night of her life, and she goes to church every single Sunday with me. My daughter is in Sunday school. My daughter goes to church every single Sunday with us. She sings with the adult choir. She's 4. She was invited to the adult choir. She sings with the children's choir. So that is a huge part of our life. So it is something that's, we wouldn't be where we're at right now without it. So
How prevalent is faith with recovery? So in regards to all of your recovery, you went to 2 faith-based programs. How important is that in the recovery process?
Recovery is dead without a higher power. You can't recover by yourself, dog. It don't work.
So now, along with faith, there's what they call brotherhood. In the military, we call it camaraderie. So we have all these guys. You've been on 3 deployments. You fought next to these guys. Some guys never came home. You've taken wounds. There's a lot going on, and you build such a camaraderie with these guys. How important is that now, the same way as it is in a combat zone or in military law enforcement first responder world, as it is in a Christian realm, to have brotherhood?
It's the exact same way. We're just fighting a different battle.
Yeah.
We're just fighting a different battle on a different front. That's all. We're just fighting life. So like I can lean. So if I'm in Iraq, I lean on my brother to my left and my right to save my life when bullets are flying. Right. If I'm fighting a battle internally here at home with life, I lean on my brother to my left and right to lift me up and get me through tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's through the church, man. Like I can ride down that road tomorrow, talk to my pastor, talk to my deacon. It don't matter what time of day it is. It doesn't matter what's going on in life. They're going to be there. Same way it would be for them too. So, I mean, the brotherhood doesn't die. It's always there, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what the situation is.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Justin, we're gonna wind this down. I got 2 questions left for you. Number 1 would be, tell the audience what that sign is behind you. Yeah.
That wooden sign was actually hung on my barracks. It was on the second deck of my barracks. It hung on there, I think from the 70s or 80s. It was made a long time ago. I stood under that. My whole unit stood under that. A lot of 1-6 Marines, a Bravo company stood under that for a long time. Decades of Marines stood under that. Our barracks were torn down a couple years ago and rebuilt. One of my roommates actually, who's still in the Marine Corps, about to retire, I believe, this year. He had gotten it. He worked his magic and gotten it. And I went up to visit him one time, and stupidly, I had offered him $2,500 for it and said that every 3 years when he changes duty stations, I'll come visit him and he can give me the $2,500 back. But that has not happened. And so he got $2,500 for me, and I still got the sign. So good luck. It's now going to $5,000. So if he wants it back, it's going to be $5,000. So
Is it for sale?
Yeah.
Is it for sale for anyone else?
No, I don't know. It's gonna, I don't know. It's got a lot of meaning there. So.
Yeah. All right. The last thing I want to ask is, before we close, do you have anything you want to say to anybody that may be struggling, maybe has a similar situation that you had, as you struggled through all this stuff? What would you say to them, and what kind of form of encouragement could you give?
I mean, it's always dark, brother. Like, it's always dark, but it's never too dark to see a light, man. There's resources everywhere. Hey, reach out, dude. Like, I've been in so many situations where, like, I felt like nobody gave a crap, dude. You could throw a rock and nobody would care. Somebody always does, man. And it might be a stranger in a faraway place that unlikely cares, but somebody does. The one thing I will say is, I hold a lot of value in the suicide rate with veterans. I know I was at a place. I know you've had people on this podcast, and there's people probably today that are thinking about taking their own life and stuff. I've lost a lot of friends in combat. I've lost more at home, and that's sad. So it doesn't have to be like that. So my phone's always open, man. I know if everybody else's phone's open, just call somebody. It doesn't have to be like that. So, and like I said, I mean, there's a church around the corner in every single town. It doesn't matter if it's your church or somebody's church. There's always somebody there that'll listen to you.
Well, Justin, again, man, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, especially early this morning. You know, it's hard for Marines to get up this early anymore, former Marines. So thanks for taking the time to come and hang with me. Thanks for sharing your testimony and just, digging deep. I greatly appreciate it, man.
Yeah, buddy.
Well, everybody, thank you for watching the Ready to Fight podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you always know when another podcast is dropped. And we appreciate you following us on this journey. And don't forget, never give up. Always keep in the fight. Remember to keep God in the center of everything you do. And until next time, thank you so much for watching.